I'm David Attenborough. And in today's documentary, we are going to go back in time to view our ancient ancestors' landscape and stories. For example, they would often trek miles and miles across continents in weather similar to this, maybe even deadlier. And they would constantly have to look out for the next meal and predators. We are going to look into how they made their pastimes, how they enjoyed themselves, how they got food, and especially how they lived. Starting with this section, lifestyle. So, please meet me back at the studio. I'm David Attenborough, and I think it's time you meet the lineup of our cavemen. This is Tom. He's the alpha of the bunch and does most of the hunting. This is Audie. Audie is very autistic and does a lot of the paintings. This is Lucy. Lucy is the mother of the bunch and often helps with setting up camp. And then lastly, we have Lucas. Lucas will not make it to next winter. For our first guest, we are going to talk to professional Bob Campbell. So what was life like for them back then?
Well, it was much harder than life is now.
And why is that?
Well, first of all, they were hunter-gatherer people who had to follow their food yearly, and this was quite a challenge. Which is why they often traveled in groups of about 100 and...
And, oh, I hear they're very autistic.
What?
Autistic?
Oh, artistic.
Yes.
Yes, they were very artistic and often made paintings of their hunting experiences.
And they hunted with spears?
Yes.
Why not helicopters?
Excuse me?
Helicopters?
Well, they didn't have the capabilities to build helicopters.
So they were dumb.
No, actually, they were quite smart.
So why no helicopters? We hit a lot of topics in that interview, but the biggest one was hunting. Now, here's some footage of what that might have looked like. Fortunately, Lucas did perish, but don't worry, that won't affect anything. Now, let's move on to see what their travel might have looked like. The Paleolithic peoples often traveled many, many miles through continents and countries that hadn't even been made yet. Here is some dialogue between the two that I will translate for you. They often got into heated discussions and battles. For example, this one here said his feet hurt. He said, no, we must keep marching, for we don't want to be eaten by lions. The beta is challenging the alpha. But the alpha will not take this. This intimidation stance. This gets all the ladies. But the beta stays worried. A new alpha has been made. Very impressive indeed. We meet our next guest, Ariana Kolvik, who is a specialist in linguistics. Please tell me, how was language like back then?
Well, they didn't really speak much. They mainly spoke in grunts and like noises to communicate.
So, like, could you give me an example?
Like, I don't really know how to explain it because I wasn't there.
So, did they do anything else or were they just lazy?
No, they didn't only express themselves in noises. They also express themselves in paintings that you can find all over the world, like Spain and the Americas.
Now where is that? For this next clip, we asked Audie to show us how he makes most of his cave paintings. Why don't you show him, Audie? Very impressive, indeed. Oi! Next up, we talked to professional Mr. Jacob Knapp. Do you have any questions before this interview starts?
Yeah, why am I in such a... I'm in a really small stool, and you've got that nice chair. What was that?
It's a great question. Let me follow it up with one of my own. I hear cavemen invented fire. Now that's a pretty great invention, if you ask me. Is that true?
No.
So who did invent it?
I guess you could say Mother Nature, but that's not a person, that's... Yeah.
I've never met her. Don't worry about my parents right now. I got in a little bit of a tussle. But in that last clip, we talked about how cavemen invented fire. Let's see what that might have looked like in action. For our final guest, we have brought a live ancestor of one of the wolves that used to hunt our ancestors. Quite interesting indeed. So tell me, how'd they taste? For this next part, we wanted to see what would happen if we introduced cavemen to a modern lady. Here, Audie. What do you think of that? Okay, now I'm gonna take that away. This has been the Paleolithic era with David Attenborough. That's me. Next time, in our next installation, we are going to be covering, Jesus Christ, the Great Molasses Crisis of the... We meet our second professional, Ariana Kovic. So what was life like for them back then?
Trying to get all their troubled times off.
Our ancestors. Quite interesting. So tell me, did they taste good? So it was tough for them.
Yeah, it was very tough for them.
So did they do anything else, or were they just lazy? What do you think about it?
That is red paint.
And it is quite magnificent, is it?
No.
$5. Give me an example. Maybe towards me.